Exactly, exactly. And the story behind the intelligence leak is a very simple one. After COVID ended up spreading around the United States and producing a gigantic domestic disaster, obviously our intelligence services wanted to prove that they were not responsible for what happened, that they had provided the information to the top American leadership, which was just ignored. In other words, they wanted to get away from being blamed for the disaster. Therefore, 4 separate intelligence sources confirmed to ABC News that the secret report had been provided to the White House and our top leadership in November, describing a potentially cataclysmic disease outbreak taking place in the city of Wuhan, China. The problem with it, the problem they ran into is then when somebody checked the timeline, they realized in November, there was no cataclysmic disease outbreak in Wuhan. At that point, according to all the available knowledge and retrospective evidence, probably a dozen or maybe 20 people were starting to feel a little bit sick in a city of 11 million. There was no way for any outside observer to possibly be aware of the disease outbreak at that point. In fact, the Chinese government itself only became aware of the outbreak at the end of December, 6 or 7 weeks later. So naturally, the Pentagon immediately denied the existence of that report, said, we don't care. 4 intelligence sources said that they produced the report. It never existed. However, a week later, Israeli television confirmed the existence of a report, saying that report had been sent to Israel, it had been sent to all of our NATO allies in November, and it had been produced in the second week of November. Again, the second week of November was long before anybody in the world could have possibly been aware of the disease outbreak in Wuhan, except for the people responsible. It's fairly close to a smoking gun.
It looks that way to me, too. It's interesting. Was it Esper they asked about this? And he said, what he said, I don't recall.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, at that point, again, it was an embarrassment that the report had been provided to these people and ignored until people realized that the dates proved that it was foreknowledge of the outbreak in Wuhan. So in other words, it's one thing to have an embarrassment of the fact that the government ignored a report like that. It's another thing when the report proves who was responsible for the disease outbreak. And I mean, America, over the decades, America has spent $100 billion developing its biowarfare technology. The Trump administration brought in Robert Cadillac, America's leading biowarfare expert, in 2017. And in 2018, there was suddenly a mysterious viral epidemic that devastated China's poultry industry. In 2019, China's pig herds were annihilated. And then in late 2019, suddenly the COVID epidemic brought up, which really raises all sorts of incredibly dark suspicions of what really happened.
Nate, do you think Trump's telling the truth that he wasn't in the loop?
I definitely, I don't doubt that the report might have been sent to Trump's desk, but I get the sense that Trump doesn't actually read a lot. And you have all these stories of, for example, Trump's senior officials hiding his own executive orders.
Mm-hmm. And he forgets about them.
He would forget about them. I mean, we're talking about an administration that really was operating in a very strange way, with the top figures in the administration running circles around the president, ignoring the president. And I fully believe that Trump had absolutely no idea when COVID leaked back to the United States that it was an American biowarfare weapon that was coming to hit us. And that's the reason they ignored it. That's the reason his response was so lackadaisical.
The perpetrators who actually were in the loop have somehow raised the alarm in such a way that the U.S. could protect itself.
Well, they did to some extent. I mean, for example, Robert Cadillac, again, our top biowarfare expert, from January to August 2019, Cadillac and his department ran something called the Crimson Contagion exercise, in which federal and state officials in the United States planned out how they would ensure that if a mysterious viral epidemic, a mysterious respiratory virus suddenly appeared in China, that they would prevent it from devastating America and leaking back here. 8 months they did it, and the virus of exactly that type suddenly appeared in China a couple of months after the end of that exercise. Now, as it turned out, the training obviously was insufficient. And
that's the understatement of the century.
It shows that the people involved in launching the attack against China certainly were making efforts to protect America from any backwash, but it proved insufficient.
You didn't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out, did you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there's no way something of this gigantic magnitude can be kept suppressed for much longer.